Hello and welcome to Central Coast Poetry Shows, and I'm your host, Jim Russo. My reason for producing this show is this. For about 10 years, I've been reading and attending poetry readings all over California's Central Coast. And during that time, I've had the privilege of hearing and seeing some very talented poets read their own words. This show is to be a platform for those poets to be seen and heard by you. Tonight, our first guest is Walton Wolff. Walton Wolff is an award-winning writer and poet who was born in the San Francisco Bay Area and grew up there and in Latin America. She is a graduate of the University of California, and her writing has appeared in several publications, including the San Francisco Chronicle, West Magazine, the San Jose Mercury News, the Santa Cruz Sentinel, Porter Gulch Review, Storming Heaven's Gate, the Los Angeles Times, and NPR. Jean has recently published her first book, Heaven is a Beach at Low Tide, a collection of her essays, poetry, and fiction, some of which have been published elsewhere over the years. Her book includes some of her illustrations, too. Jean is a founder of the Community Writers of Santa Cruz, a monthly open mic forum for poets and prose writers. She lives in Santa Cruz County, and without further ado, my friend Jean.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's begin by talking about your new book.
Okay.
Because we've been waiting for it for a while.
For a long time, yeah. I'm so happy about it.
So please tell us about it.
Okay, it's called Heaven is a Beach at Low Tide, and it's a collection of poems, essays, and fiction that I've written over the past many years. So I'm finally getting it done. I'm just so happy about it. I'm happy how it came out.
Outstanding.
Yeah, so it's good. Some of the pieces have been published elsewhere. And what it is, it's a collection of different themes. Part of it is a memoir of growing up in Latin America, the middle sections are, and a lot of it is about the ocean and California coast, so it's appropriate to be on.
Where in Latin America did you hail from?
We were in 3 countries, Jamaica, Guatemala, and Panama, from the time I was about 8 to 18 or so. Oh. So a big chunk of childhood, so it has influenced my writing and family life.
Well, imagine,
Yeah. So a lot to call from, so.
Well, now I'd like you to talk about the writers group that you've started. Was about 6 years now.
Coming on about 7, yeah.
Going on 7 years.
Yeah, I can remember.
So tell the viewers where they can get in touch with that reading.
Okay, it's called Community Writers of Santa Cruz County, and it's an open mic. It's monthly, the 4th Saturday, 2:30 to 4:30. It's at Porter Memorial Library in Soquel. And we're not affiliated with the library, but we rent space from them. And they're at 3050 Porter Street in Soquel. And we're on the 4th Saturday always from 2:30 on. And signups are at 2:15 for people who want to read. And it's for any poet or prose writers. So we do both. And people have about 5 minutes to read or so. And it's a really very sweet library. It's independently run. Most people don't know about it. It's really common when people walk in there for the first time, they'll say, I had no idea this was here. It's
the 100-year-old one-room library.
Absolutely. With a fireplace.
No one's ever been there. It's quite a treasure.
Yeah, and you've read there too.
Has the old wooden floors and fireplace.
And a lot of characters.
Really nice atmosphere.
Yeah, it's a very good group. Yeah, I was the founding mother a bunch of years ago, and now it's run really by community. So I want to just do a shout out for people who are doing such good work for it now. Jennifer Pittman I call her our tech person. She's doing a great job and a wonderful writer. And Wilma Marcus Chandler and John Chandler arrange our featured readers, because 8 times a year, we have a featured reader. So they've been just doing a great job. So everyone there really participates. People come and set up, and we had just some really great readers there.
Yeah, I've read there a lot over the years. It's been fun.
I remember your Halloween poem. You have to come read that every October. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Why You Hate Halloween. That's a good one.
Well, it's at this point of the show where I ask you, of all the poems you've written, do you have a favorite?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I kind of love them all. I knew you were going to ask that. But I have one now that's kind of just speaking to me, and I'm going to read that one first.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. What's the title?
It's called Why Sea Stars Rule the World. And it's a poem based on an essay I wrote, and I've turned it into a poem for today.
Oh, cool. So, without further ado, I'm going to ask you to step to the podium, read that poem first, and then give us some more.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Deon Wolff.
Why Sea Stars Rule the World, a poem after the 2016 election. I went down to the beach the day of the inauguration for comfort, inspiration, and hope. The ocean was stormy and upset, with brown milk chocolate waves charging the cold beach. At first, I thought Mother Ocean was as angry and afraid as the rest of us at this election, but after a while of standing there, taking in the fresh salt air, I felt the ocean say, "Don't be ridiculous. We're not afraid of that lunatic clown you elected. So go make yourself useful," Mother Ocean continued, "but do not be afraid and do not be discouraged." That helped. The beach is a great comforter in uncertain times. The world under the sea hides forests of swaying kelp, myriad animals known and unknown in the deep, mysterious sea. And among these salty neighbors of ours are the amazing sea stars, creatures we used to call starfish because, well, they're not fish. Another writer describes sea stars as no eyes, no brain, no problem. These wonderful sea creatures are 450 million years old, and if they lose a limb, they just regrow another. Sea stars give us hope, especially in these challenging times. They are sturdy, and even with no eyes, no brains, no problem, they outdo us. Sea stars are creative, adaptable, humble, very unassuming. Sea stars are patient and very quiet. They do not take more than their fair share. They do not discard plastics into the sea. They do not pollute. They do not start wars. And sea stars do not elect orange-haired, unqualified maniacs to run their world. The sea stars and the rest of patient nature witness our painfully slow development with a grace and patience that boggles the mind. I'm surprised a whole army of sea stars or other creatures hasn't simply risen up and done away with us. And so for these and many other reasons, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I therefore conclude that sea stars do indeed, or at least should, rule the world. Poipu Kauai. You would never know, given this blue and shell-pink morning sky, honey-colored beach and laughing children playing in aquamarine water before breakfast, that 20 years ago a hurricane bombed this beach and buildings to black char. Homes gaped like dead people, bandaged in cold blue tarps. The silence was eerie and sad. Looking at this sun-sparkled beach today, you would never know. You would also never know that under the peaceful emerald grass of the Lihui Cemetery, just down the highway from here, is now my mother's final home, buried after another hurricane that same year, one terrible and only inside her, destroyed her and could not be controlled. You would never know her terrible destruction or the wounds she left, where she lies now, near the quiet old sugar mill, which doves watch over. You would never know that a day like today could exist ever, that buildings seemingly beyond repair could come back from the dead, that the sun would ever be seen again, or that with time, in the soft touch of warm salt air, my mother would appear to me in my mind's eye, wearing a clean white shirt near her grave in that bright tropical sun, and say to me clearly, without words, "But that is not me, and I am not there." And you would never know that one day I would believe. Fireplace. A red brick fireplace in a simple house from years ago lives on in me still, though it is long gone. That hearth was the heart of my world. Those peaceful yellow crackles still warm me today. On quiet nights, the ocean's distant pulse reached us as we sat in that cozy room. Sometimes there was popcorn along with orange warmth dancing on logs. The fireplace's gentle snapping comforted more than my skin. It soothed my very soul. Even the later dark years of Bourbon's destruction could not erase those lovely flames. And now, though long gone, that fireplace and its warmth and those days burn steady and strong within me, living forever in and around me always, close as my own heart. Fried egg flowers. They have a real name, probably. These huge, gangly flowers on stalks towering over me with giant petals like white silk, flapping in the breeze without a care in the world and yolk-yellow centers, fat as eggs, around which bees flutter and hum. Who made these plate-sized blossoms anyway, and why does standing next to them feel as comforting as a child sheltered by her grandfather? I feel strangely encouraged, like by a sparkling waterfall. These fried egg flowers nod and shimmy in the wind, apparently afraid of nothing in their wind-blown, ridiculous beauty. They grow on fuzzy, awkward stalks, seemingly all abandoned, but muscling their way out of a crack in the asphalt of a church parking lot. No one waters them but God, yet they thrive tall and magnificent and cheerful, and say quite clearly, do not say impossible, too late, or never. Forget about it does not exist. You can begin again at any time. Just being here or anywhere with your roots, or complete lack of roots, is just fine, is all we ask. You're doing better than you know, and are loved more than you can imagine. Just trust it is enough to be alive, to be here, to breathe, to try. This one is a love letter to Santa Cruz County. It's called Rubies and Pearls. Black night cloaks evening traffic on Highway 1 at the end of the day. I race south in the dark past Aptos, Deer Park, Freedom Boulevard. A Hummer roars by, annoyed and gunning its engine, trying to pass. Its bright white lights glaring like dinner plates in my face. I follow red taillights in front of me, a sea of tired drivers. We surge up the sloping hill, and an empty water bottle rattles around on my dark car floor. It is cold tonight. Then suddenly the world of traffic calms as valleys and plains skirting La Selva open up before us, gracious and inviting, draped in night's rich black satin. The endless white procession of headlights in the other lane now moves slower, magically transformed into a gracious, luminescent parade, a necklace of lovely pearls stretching between ocean and hills. I breathe deeply, the first time in miles, as the bloodshot taillights in front of me transform into another lovely long necklace, this one of rubies, glowing warm against the night. We are all connected now, pearls and rubies flowing peacefully past each other, just two rows of jewels. We do not hurry, and we are not lonely in this our familiar world, dressed up for the night in rubies and pearls. Like Dorothy clicking her heels, there's no place like home. The world turned upside down. Around the time of the election, I painted a seascape, a somber scene with dark sky full of fading white stars, signaling the end of the day or the end of the world or the end of something. Gloomy white clouds hung overhead like worried eyebrows. Recently, by mistake, though, the painting was inadvertently turned upside down, and lo and behold, an entirely new world emerged. It was unrecognizable. Previous sad stars are now friendly, playful eyes peeking out from rich, dark ocean, protected by thick, foamy waves, formerly the sad eyebrow clouds. A cheerful fog is lifting onto a sunny new day. Ocean is now sky. Sky is now sea. Perhaps the upside-down painting is a sign from the universe about the election. All is not lost after all. After this time, at some point, life will right itself, and we will recreate anew from what now seems unfixable. Life is doing that at this very moment. And eventually, something unrecognizable, something good will emerge and will be all around us. We can only hope. This is an ode to the American diet, United States of food. Oh, beautiful for spacious pies, for amber slabs of ham, for purple mugs of giant Slurpees near endless shelves of Spam. America, America, thank God for Alka-Seltzer, and crown thy good with deep-fried food and cheese nips and tuna meltzer. I pledge allegiance to the figs of the United States of America, and to the Republic of hot dog stands, one ration underdone, side of nachos, extra cheese with licorice and slushies for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Gene Wolff. Thank you, Gene. My next guest, Dion O'Reilly, has spent much of her life on a small farm in the Santa Cruz Mountains. She studies with Ellen Bass and Denutia Lamaris and attends an MFA program in creative writing at Pacific University. She's worked as a waitress, a barista, a baker, a theater manager, a graphic designer, a fitness instructor, and a public school teacher. Her poetry appears or is forthcoming in Rattle, The Sun, Canary Magazine, Spillway, Bellingham Review, Atlantic Review, Red Wheelbarrow, Censura, and a variety of other literary journals and anthologies, including the Lambada Literary Anthology. Her work has been nominated for Pushcarts, the Intro Journals Project, and was a semifinalist in the Folio Literary Journal Poetry Contest. That's quite an accomplishment. And now I'd like to welcome Dion to my show.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, nice to meet you. Nice to see you again. We've known each other for a while.
That's right.
I wanted to talk about your influences and mentors that have influenced your writing, if you would.
Well, I probably wouldn't be a poet, or at least not as good of a poet anyway, if I hadn't started studying with Ellen Bass a long time ago, maybe 25 years ago. And then I started studying with her student, Denutia Lamaris. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of a part of a lineage, really, and of poets who write more narrative, less associative poetry. Dorian Locks, Joe Millar. I've also studied with them. So yeah, those have been, and Tony Hoagland's been a big influence because he's so irreverent and funny and talented. So those have been my major influences.
You're drawn to the humor.
I do. Don't have any funny poems today, but I do like to be funny. Yeah. I think poets and comedians have a lot in common.
I think so. I think so. We're all looking for a reaction.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's true.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Well, I know you've been reading for a while. I wanted to ask you about politics, poetry and politics. Is that something that you're driven to do, or?
Well, I think if you can write a good political poem that you really want to try to do that, it's just so hard to do. It's hard to do because you don't want to be rhetorical and you don't want to be just, reciting the catechism of the party line.
Right.
And you don't want to use kind of, expressions that are in the news. So you have to bring yourself to the political event and make it more universal, and that's very difficult to do. And often in my poetry groups, people will bring in political poems, and they get knocked because it's so easy to be cliche. But I do try to write political poems if I can.
And you would call yourself a narrative poet.
I'm more of a narrative poet. In poetry circles, there's always kind of like a divide between the people who like associative poetry, which is more like the kind of poetry when people say, I don't like poetry, I don't understand it. That's usually associative poetry because it's just a string of images, and people are like, well, what are you talking about?
But metaphors.
Metaphors and images and how do they fit together. But narrative poetry usually tells a story or has an idea that is cohesive throughout. It might elaborate on that idea in lots of creative ways and symbolic ways, but there's some kind of backbone. And I like that because I feel like everyone can understand it, and so you create community.
Right.
You get everyone in the conversation, which is kind of radical.
Exactly.
Just in and of itself.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you what I ask all my poets and my guests is, of all the poems you've written, do you have a favorite?
Well, I do like a poem that I wrote after going to Thailand and riding elephants there, and it's called Must. And it's kind of political in a way, so I do like that one.
Oh, good. Well, if you'll step to the podium and read that poem first, and then give us what else you have.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dion O'Reilly.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. This is so great to share poetry and get it out in the world. So my first poem is Must. Must. The word for when bull elephants are straight up crazy. To smash, fuck, and kill. Their penises longer than yardsticks, erect for months at a time, a stream of urine dribbling a trail of stench, sludge of hormones leaking from their temples and running into their mouths. They tell the truth with trumpet, stomp, and stink. No veneer in the few wild islands of green that remain, while in zoos and the streets of Burma, the spell lasts only days because they're chained, starved, held in solitary. Weakening the body weakens the frenzy. What else can be done? There's no realm vast enough for such delirium. I think of the rough boys I grew up with, the ones who hunted and ate squirrels, the flesh gamey and smelling of bay trees. The barefoot trails my friends walked to the creek are gone, and so are the steelhead, snagged on wormy hooks, cooked in a blaze on a rocky floodplain. Teddy Roosevelt said, "War is imperative among honorable men," hoping his sons returned with missing limbs. Muhammad Ali, what would he have done without his elegant power? Arjuna, even. How to spread the holy word whispered to him by Krishna, if not by rendering it in blood? How can the male sex give it up? Their smooth ivory flashing in the savannah sun, the gore and puncture, the strong semen sending exactly who they are into this diminishing world. Afterlife. In the hot summers of childhood, we'd wade a mile in the river, you up against the current, and I down toward the sea. And we screamed like bloody birds. So before you appeared around the bend of the stream, I heard your calls strafe the air. And then we stood face to face in our familiar place, a fattening of the river next to a broad beach, rough with granite and quartz. Minnows' lips on our legs, a cold ache in our feet. The shadows of water skeeters like bunches of black grapes flicking along the floor. Susie, I never lost you through the brutal climb of our 20s, our failed marriages, your treks to Kauai, your plummets down the ski runs of Bear Valley. When we'd meet, you'd kiss me on the lips, tell me schnapps cured a cold, say you liked waking up higher, close to the sun. So you settled in gold country, waiting tables and selling real estate. Then you were gone at 54, your stomach full of bourbon and OxyContin. I'm still living on the same stream-cut terrace high above the dwindling creek. Your mom's old house on the floodplain, sold, full of strangers now. I wish I could tell you how seldom I go to the bottomland, how there are gates on the trails, how the land, disgruntled, sends up walls of slick poison oak. And sometimes I hear a heron's call, harsh and harried. I see her lift above the tree line and glide away, her legs trailing behind. Many years ago, I was in a house fire, and this is a poem about leaving the burn ward, the first day I left the burning ward. Leaving the burn ward. It's strenuous to be vertical, to be outside again in the glare of the parking lot, reaching for my mother's elbow, crooked like a cane. The seats of the Lincoln Continental are warm from the sun, but I forget how to climb in. So she bends my body to fit, and I touch the blue leather, aware that it's skin. My tightly wrapped forearms stretching on the rests, while my legs, bound in pressure garments, reach across the carpeted floor. Highway 17 terrifies me, twisting through the coastal range, the maples molting their yellow leaves. Steep above the road, nets of heavy chain constrain the crumbling cliffs, and as I pass, the trees lean over me and tremble. My muted words as I speak are nearly lost in the hum of the V8. Slow down, I say. Turn off the radio. My mother complies, silent. What can you say to a person shocked by being alive? Everything that's old. Jets are the new motorhomes. Chemtrails are the new clouds. The unknown dead on an island are the calm before a storm. Robots are the new immigrants. Roundup is the new hoe. Colbert is the new Cronkite. Smoke is the new sky. Drought is the new summer. Cars are heart disease. Dust is lawn. Downtown is the new homeless. Amazon is the new mall. Retired is the new nomad. Needles are the new rusty nail. Plastic, the new lead. Viral, the new headline. The horizon of the Western Ocean is the new ghost of Godzilla. The Cold War is the new Cold War. Fire heading down a suburban street is wind. Anxiety is the new air. The earth's crust is the weak eggshell of a songbird.
Thank you, Dion. That's Dion O'Reilly, folks. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you all for watching our show, Central Coast Poetry Shows, here from Santa Cruz. Find us again. Thank you and good night.
I'm beating up the street tonight. I slept through the natural light, but I'll do it